Hello, everybody. Today I will be talking about the business psychodynamics. And to explain the business psychodynamics, I will be talking about recessions because that is like the biggest part of the business cycle, right? So when we think about recessions, we think of often like big unusual events like the 2008 housing crash or the COVID-19 shutdown, right? Like we all know. But not every recession is a dramatic or chaotic type of recession, right? These were which I will later explain, uh, an extreme harsh case, not really caused by the business cycle. These were, I guess, well, COVID was a nature, an event caused by nature, which is out of our hands, obviously. And then the housing market crisis was obviously because banks were giving loans to people who weren't, who did not have obviously good credit scores. So, and that's why that happened. So those are two extreme cases that everyone thinks recession is that, but there are recessions that perfectly match the business cycle, which is a really extreme, which is a really good cycle that explains the process. So I want to talk about the 1990 to 1991 recession cycle, or recession. This is a downturn that exactly perfectly fits the business cycle pattern, which we can, I guess, predict um, for future crashes, right? So this is why I picked this, and I'll be getting and I'll explain this. So let's talk about unemployment because that is also a part of this. According to Fred, uh, the U.S. Unemployment rate in the early 1990 was about 5.3%, and by mid 1991, the recession peaked to 7.8%, and that's obviously a massive increase. Obviously, it's not big as the COVID increase we saw with COVID from 4 to 12. That was obviously because of stuff out of our control and business having to suddenly shut down. But this is a standard shutdown. What economists describe as a standard shutdown with using the business cycle. So basically, what happens is business slowly reduced hiring, consumer spending eased, and manufacture actively cooled. So people don't want to manufacture. So unlike recessions tied to bubbles or crises like like COVID or like that, um, the 1990 recession didn't cause massive job losses overnight. Instead, it unfolded like several quarters, a smooth um, like slope in unemployment rate rather than a spike, which I would say is worse because when you have a spike of unemployment, you also then in a few months have a spike of jobs open now, right? Like sudden because of COVID, everyone had to fire people. Few months when everything when everything again started going offline and everyone started hiring in person again, there was a um huge opening in the job market. But with a slow, it's like a slow death. You have to kind of wait, and because of that, I would say that this is probably one of the worst how do I say it, worser in employment stage than obviously a spike. So what do you say, what makes this a normal business cycle recession? Obviously we need to understand what the business cycle is. So obviously, as we all know, the business cycle is expansion, right, where hiring and rise, peak, everything is there's a huge rise, and then we have a peak. So the expansion, and then there's a peak. So what's the peak? The peak is when everything is at the peak, right? It cannot be better than this. This is literally the peak of our current resources. This is the peak. This is, top dog. We can't get better than this. So this is the peak, and then obviously growth starts to slow down. Um, that's called a contraction. So I guess like this. So this is the expansion. This is the peak. This is the contraction, right? Start slowing down. Businesses pull back. They're not hiring. They were in the peak. They were hiring so many people. Now they have to. Okay, we can't just hire everybody. We have to let go a few people, and then comes obviously the recession, right? Uh, when the economy starts again balancing. So the 1990 to 1991 followed this like as like a textbook. It literally said like, let me steal your notes, basically. Um, so interest rates did their job in the late 1980s. The Federal Reserve raised interest rates to fight inflation, and hiring higher borrowing costs usually cool off spending, and that's exactly what kind of happened. Investment slowed and hiring softened, right? Kind of what we discussed. And it was like a mild shock. So it was not a huge crisis where everyone's like, whoa, let's pull back right away. Um, and it was predictable labor market effects. As a businessman, you have to as a business you have to tighten your budget. Unemployment drifted upward, not skyrocket again. It did not skyrocket. It just slowly, and then in a month you realize, whoa, that is a huge, or not a month, but over this year period you realize like, wow, that is huge. And like I said, I personally feel that is a worse, um like a worse, how do I say, I don't know how to describe that, like a worse outcome than having a spike. So let's conclude the 7 minute long podcast. So I'm sorry, Mr. G. So what can we learn from the recession? Obviously, not every downturn has to be a disaster. This was not a huge disaster. Obviously, it was still pretty bad, but it was not a huge disaster. And economy cools down because it's supposed to. Like we learn about in the long run, short run. Everything has to again balance out. So that's kind of what happened. Interest rate rise, spending slows, and businesses adjust. That is kind of the seasonal thing. So that makes the 1990 to 1991 recession the perfect example of a classic business cycle contraction, right? Steady, predictable, and then followed by a healthy recovery. So I personally wish that we talk about the 1990 to 1991 recession more in class, because all I've taken two economics classes. We kind of just talk about the 2008 recession and the COVID. Those are the two. I feel like learning about a recession like this really helps you really understand the business cycle, and you actually say, yeah, you know what, that makes sense. That just makes sense, right? It perfectly follows. So next time you hear economists talk about a recession, or we've had the peak, and the peak, obviously we can't say like for certain, but you can say, what, maybe I should listen to them. Maybe I should not be going out and spending all my money, right? Maybe just listen to them. And so that is why the 1990 to 1991 recession is one of my favorite examples of a recession. And yeah, thank you for watching. Have a blessed day. And that was me. Peace out.